Rocket Mortgage filing suit against the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The company alleging that HUD has created a conflict between appraiser oversight and independence. Rocket Mortgage has also filed a motion to be dismissed from a DOJ racial discrimination lawsuit. And joining us right now to talk about it is Bill Emerson. He's the president of Rocket Companies. And Bill, this is a complicated case. I think we probably need to walk people through it if they haven't been following along in the headlines, which I had not until we booked you to come on to talk about this. This dates back to a case that was from Colorado where a homeowner back in 2020 decided to make some renovations to her home. In the process of doing that, she had applied to refinance her mortgage. You all told her that she needed to get an appraisal. The appraisal came through. It valued her home much lower than it had just an appraisal a year earlier. It went from $860,000 to $640,000. She was very upset, thought it was racial profiling that led to that. And then what ensued?
Well, first of all, it's great to be back on the show, Becky. What ensued is a lawsuit that the Department of Justice filed on behalf of HUD against Rocket Mortgage and the third-party appraisal management company Solidify and the actual state licensed appraiser. And what's ludicrous about that is that federal law prohibits us from getting involved in the appraised value process. You go all the way back to 2008. And the Great Recession, and Dodd-Frank made appraisal independence crystal clear. So, we now have to order appraisals through a third-party appraisal management company that then goes and hires the appraiser. So we did not hire this appraiser. A third party hired this appraiser. The claim of discrimination, if there is discrimination there, I want the client to get justice. But that justice should come at the right place, from the appraiser, not the lender, who has absolutely no ability to affect the outcome here. This is a three-time client for us. We want to help her. We want to help every client we can possibly help. But what we don't want is to be the poster child that the DOJ uses to garner headlines, which is exactly what they did in this particular case, because we did everything we could do. We did everything by the letter of the law. We offered the client 2 times to go through a process of value reconsideration, providing us additional information that would allow the appraiser to correct it, and she refused both times. So there's nothing more that we could do in this particular situation. So here we are again, deja vu all over again, having to file suit against the government to get justice on something and clarity on something that we believe we deserve, but I think the rest of the industry deserves as well, because once again, now what this really is let's find a large player, let's use them. We're the only one named, by the way, in the press release and at the top of the lawsuit. You don't hear the name of the third-party appraisal company, and you don't hear the appraiser. So, Becky, honestly, we're just left with no other choice. We have 15,000 team members who do the right thing every single day. We've got to be able to look them in the eye and tell them that we are not going to stand for this, and so this is where we are.
Yeah, Bill, as I mentioned, it's a complicated case. I read the headlines. I read some of the stories that were written on this. And at first blush, it's like, yeah, why didn't you guys help her? The more I read, the more I understood your position on this. The idea that you are not allowed. This is an independent appraisal. You are not allowed to be involved on any of this going through. What have the conversations with HUD been? Or have you had conversations with HUD before they filed this lawsuit? Or did it come as a surprise?
So, I mean, HUD got involved, and HUD actually took a look at our process and what we did and the team members that were interacting with the client, and they found no fault from any of our team members. And so, I find it odd that we're in the case. I find it odd that we're not until page 38 of a 50-page complaint where our supposed alleged claim comes up. I mean, it's clear, Becky, on its face, that this is about how do you garner a headline on an individual case that you file. Because, listen, pursuing discrimination is a noble thing. It should be done, right? But it should be done in the right manner, in the right way, for the right party. And that's our contention. And what's happening now is you've got HUD, through the DOJ, basically through enforcement, changing the game. So how is a lender supposed to know what they're supposed to do? When can they intervene? When should they not intervene? How do you know whether there's discrimination or not? You're not the one that hired the appraiser. You're not the one involved in that process. And so what we want is clarity for us. We want clarity for the industry. And we don't know any other way to get it. And we simply can't just sit by and have our reputation destroyed.
The reason for the Dodd-Frank issuing was they did not want people who were writing mortgages to be able to overinflate the value of homes to get us into the trouble we wound up with in the financial crisis to begin with. They didn't want you all to be able to say, yeah, that home looks like it's worth $1 million, when an independent appraiser might say, no, it looks like it's worth $500,000 based on the comps in the area. Now, it does look like in this case that many of there were a lot of problems with the appraiser who put her in the wrong elementary school district, looked outside a 1-mile radius, went 2.5 miles to look for comps when it looked like there were some that were in the area that should have been there. It looks like there were clearly problems with the appraisal process. But I understand why you all, bound by law, are not allowed to get involved with that process, too. I guess you're seeking clarity of the rules from the government?
Yes, absolutely. That's what we're doing. And, you know, all the things that you talk about there, I think that's a process you have to go through and through a litigation if that's what the client wants to do with the appraiser and the appraisal management company, getting clear answers to that. The appraisal process, as you know, is a very subjective process. It's a human being involved in that process. It's taking data and information. This happens to be a multifamily property, which probably makes it a little bit more complicated than a single-family property. So we don't know actually what went into that process, but because, again, we have to remain at arm's length with this process, and we have to stay out of the value process. It's interesting, Becky, when we were at war with the government before on the false claims process, same situation, they actually accused us of trying to affect and influence values in that case. They were wrong, and we proved them to be wrong. Here we are on the other side of that, saying that they're saying we have the authority to fix a discrimination issue and affect the value of an appraisal. Which way is it? You can't have it both ways, and that's the clarity that we're looking for.
Bill, let me ask you while you're here, what you're seeing in terms of demand for mortgages for refinancings. What has business been like as rates have started to come down?
You know, it's a great question. Actually, as you know, rates, the Fed cut rates 50 basis points. That had already been priced in. You'd see in the 2 or 3 weeks prior to that movement, rates drop a little bit and demand for mortgages and refinancing go up. Interestingly enough, when the Fed cut rates 50 basis points, you actually saw rates tick up a little bit. And, you know, rates are if you're doing a 0-point rate, in the mid-7s. So they're down from their highs, but they're certainly not in a position where most Americans would be able to take advantage of a refinance unless they really do want to do something from a cash-out perspective. We are seeing great volume in second mortgages, and we're the largest second mortgage lender in the country these days. But, you know, it's very challenging right now from a refinance perspective. And as you know, the housing market, demand is there. Supply is still an issue, although inventories have gotten a little bit better here from year over year. But it's still a very challenged market for folks to be able to buy a home and find one affordably.